Have you ever heard of the darkest and most disturbing story in the Old Testament? What you're about to discover isn't just a distant tale, but a sequence of events so intense and unsettling that it will challenge everything you know about the boundaries of human morality. In Judges 19, we encounter a story that, unlike any other, spares no detail in exposing the darkest side of humanity. Imagine a plot filled with betrayal, violence, and chaos, where the lines between right and wrong blur. Are you ready to delve into this shocking narrative that forces us to question just how far humanity can go? Brace yourself, because what lies ahead will change your perspective on the Bible's stories forever. To truly understand the magnitude of the horrific events that unfold in Judges 19, we must first examine the historical and social context. The book of Judges describes a turbulent period in Israel's history, an era marked by disorder and lawlessness. After the death of Joshua, Israel's leadership became fragmented, and the nation turned into a battleground of internal and external strife. Without a strong central government, the tribes lived in constant conflict, and morality was often sacrificed for the sake of survival. This chaotic and desolate backdrop sets the stage for our narrative, where moral and ethical values are utterly challenged. The story in Judges 19 not only exposes the fragility of human nature, but also serves as a warning about the consequences of abandoning morality. At a time when external pressures intensify, the struggle for identity and internal survival becomes visceral. The Israelites, divided and in constant conflict, stray from the path of God, making them increasingly vulnerable to corruption and despair. In this setting, we encounter a Levite, a man of the clergy who should be a model of morality and devotion to God. Yet he finds himself troubled, dissatisfied with the life he's leading. His heart is heavy and his soul restless. This Levite represents a class that, once respected, now struggles to maintain its dignity in a world that constantly subverts what is right. He decides to seek a fresh start and feels compelled to leave his homeland, taking his concubine and servant with him. Together, they embark on a journey of hope, but the shadow of misfortune looms on the horizon. Imagine the scene. Under the relentless heat of the Middle Eastern sun, the Levite travels with concern etched across his face. The road is long, barren, and filled with hidden dangers, with challenges at every turn. Along the way, they encounter travelers and merchants, but the tension in the air is palpable. Conversations are brief and tense, and the unfolding events will undoubtedly leave deep marks on their souls. He places his hopes in a journey meant to bring reconciliation, seeking comfort from his roots. Yet what he does not know is that his fate will turn into a nightmare, and darkness is about to consume his life. After an exhausting journey, they finally arrive at a Benjamite city, where they are taken in by an elderly man, a host who represents the last remnants of hospitality in a hostile world. He welcomes them into his home, offering shelter from the approaching darkness. Inside the old man's house, there is a momentary sense of tranquility, a fleeting illusion of safety. His initial gestures of hospitality offer a cloak of apparent peace, concealing the dreadful plot about to unfold. The old man, with wisdom gained over the years, senses the tension in the air and the unease in his guests' hearts. This elderly man is not just a host. He symbolizes the fading hope of an ancient tradition of welcoming strangers. During dinner, he shares stories of courage and kindness that once defined the tribes of Israel. Each tale is an attempt to reconnect his visitor with a heritage of unity and strength. He recalls how, in times past, the Israelites supported one another, forming a strong nation, but now watches with sorrow as the tribes grow apart, giving way to discord. As the night progresses, the city around the house begins to change. A growing sense of unrest settles in, while the sounds from the streets grow louder and more unsettling. The sound of heavy footsteps and angry voices draws near like a storm about to break. The Levite, unaware of the impending danger, tries to relax, savoring a rare moment of calm. However, his concubine, a perceptive and watchful young woman, grows increasingly concerned as she notices the changes around them. The elderly host, with dignity and courage, offers a final warning, but his voice is drowned out by the clamor of the enraged mob. Terror closes in quickly, and darkness begins to descend upon them, sending a shiver down the spine of everyone present. In the dead of night, the door is violently broken down. A furious mob storms in, demanding something that defies all bounds of morality and decency. Their voices, filled with hatred and depravity, challenge any remnant of humanity that may still exist. The Levite, feeling the terror closing in, watches in horror as the old man tries to protect his guests. "Protect us, please, don't let them take us," he pleads, but his cries are ignored in the face of the mob's uncontrollable fury. As tensions escalate, the mob becomes more aggressive and demanding. The Levite feels paralyzed, torn between his instinct for self-preservation and the urge to protect his concubine. In a final desperate attempt to defuse the situation, the old man makes a shocking offer. He offers his own daughter and the Levite's concubine in exchange for their safety. His words echo with pain and despair. This act of sacrifice reveals not only the man's helplessness before the mob's power, but also the complete breakdown of morality in a society consumed by cruelty and brutality. What happens next is one of the most horrific scenes in the Bible, the brutality inflicted upon the Levite's concubine. The violence is swift and merciless, a wave of horror that defies any logical explanation. The Levite, unable to intervene, watches helplessly as human dignity is destroyed before his eyes. Imagine the silence of the night that follows the desperate cries. Fear now reigns in their hearts, and the city, which should have been a refuge, becomes a nightmare. The city, once built on pillars of honor, silently demands a sacrifice of its own humanity. And so dawn arrives, bringing with it a terrible reality. The Levite's concubine is found dead. Her life, once full of promise and hope, has been destroyed in an act of unspeakable cruelty. The Levite, overcome with grief, sees his world collapse. The mourning brings not only light, but also an unbearable burden. Pain and anger intertwine in the Levite's heart. He decides to take an extreme measure, a cry of revolt against the injustice his beloved suffered. Dismembering the woman's body, he sends the parts to each tribe of Israel. This act, as horrific as it is, becomes a call for collective outrage, a dark cry that cannot be ignored. It is a desperate plea that echoes through the streets, urging each tribe to witness the depravity that has corroded their society. The horror spreads like oil on water, enveloping every heart with repulsion and a thirst for justice. The Levite's message quickly reaches each tribe, provoking reactions of shock, outrage, and a collective cry for justice. The tribes gather, determined to understand the depth of the cruelty that has been revealed to them. How could they have allowed such a terrible thing to happen among them? The unification of the tribes of Israel reflects a call to action, no longer as isolated peoples, but as a nation united in the face of tragedy. Assemblies are convened, and voices rise like a roar over the mountains. The tragedy of the concubine becomes more than a personal grief. It becomes a national cry for justice. The Levite, now at the head of the crowd, recounts the horrors he witnessed, and his narrative further fuels the anger and ignites a burning desire for vengeance against the terrible injustice. What follows is a disturbing escalation of violence. A civil war breaks out, devastating the Benjamite tribes and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The Levite watches, torn between sorrow and satisfaction, as the echoes of his pain turn into a cry of iron and blood. The darkest aspects of humanity emerge, and the fight for what is considered just spirals into a massacre. The tribes, once united by indignation, now face unimaginable consequences. Historically, this civil war is not just a fight for vengeance, it is a clash between despair and morality. Many innocent lives are lost, and the dreams of a better future are drowned in chaos. The cycle of violence brings a devastating cost, one that in many ways mirrors the horror that set it all in motion. The ensuing war is not merely a dispute between tribes, it is a battle fought in the very heart of every Israelite. Just as the tribes fracture, the essence of morality is debated in every assembly. What is justice? What is right? The voices of men and women echo through the dust of the battles, reflecting the moral confusion that permeates every act of aggression. War plans are drawn up in heated discussions, and everyone wonders if vengeance will bring the redemption they seek. The battle scenes are grim, with fathers losing sons and sons losing fathers. Suffering spreads like poison through Israel's veins, and the hope for a peaceful future dissipates in the smoke of conflict. As this dark story unfolds, we are confronted with profound questions. What is morality? Where do we draw the line between justice and vengeance? And most importantly, how do we ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past? Judges 19 is not just a tale of horror, it is a warning. A reminder of what happens when civilization sinks into depravity and cruelty. Reflecting on this narrative forces us to confront our own humanity and the values we hold dear. Reflecting on this narrative forces us to confront our own humanity and the values we hold dear. Can we acknowledge the dark side of our actions, or are we blind to the brutality that resides within us? As we revisit this alarming narrative, we are invited to a deeper reflection on human nature and the boundaries of morality. The story of Judges 19 offers us an opportunity to examine how violence and injustice can manifest throughout history. It is a call for introspection and the pursuit of a higher ideal, where the lessons of the past can guide us toward a more just and humane future. This narrative also challenges us to consider the impact of our own brutality on those around us. The echoes of civil war reverberate beyond physical battles, leaving a scar on the collective memory of a people marked by pain. The discussion surrounding the consequences of violence becomes a central theme in the communities that survive the conflicts. The attempt to restore order and morality is fraught with challenges, as each tribe strives to redefine its identity and purpose in the wake of the horrors they witnessed. As the war progresses, groups begin calling for a more peaceful approach. Visionary leaders attempt to unite the people around values such as compassion and mutual respect. They organize gatherings, encouraging dialogue about forgiveness and redemption. These discussions are often fraught with tension, as the pain and loss are still fresh in everyone's memory. However, this struggle is necessary. True humanity is tested not just in the midst of conflict, but in the willingness to overcome the pain and come together to heal the wounds. In the midst of the chaos, the Levite is no longer just a man who triggered a war. He becomes a symbol of a time when values were corrupted and human dignity was forgotten. His life takes on a new meaning, serving as an example of the tragic consequences of injustice. The Levite, now confronted with the enormity of his actions, seeks to understand what is needed to rebuild a society that values life and morality. After all, he recognizes himself as part of the problem, a man who allowed himself to be consumed by fury, who not only lost his concubine but also helped ignite the anger of a nation. The civil war reaches a climax of devastation, but amidst the horror, new voices and new hopes begin to emerge. Groups start to mobilize, calling for peace instead of vengeance. Many who once fought now find themselves united in the pursuit of a deeper understanding of the lessons of the past. The idea of repairing what has been broken takes root, and communities begin working together to rebuild bonds, restore homes, and most importantly, rebuild trust. Over the years, the story of Judges 19 transforms from a mere memory of horror to a powerful teaching about compassion and understanding. The tribes, once deeply divided, begin to unite, no longer driven by fear, but by the hope of coexisting in harmony. They learn that although the mistakes of the past are heavy, the determination to create a better future can guide them toward a new path. In conclusion, these disturbing narratives are not just stories of ancient events, but radiographs of the human condition. They confront us with the challenges of living in society and the complexity of human emotions. The true test of morality and ethics is not found only in times of prosperity, but in the darkest circumstances, where character is forged in the fires of adversity. Thus, Judges 19 invites us to reflect deeply on who we are and who we can become by learning from history and looking toward the future with compassion, hope, and dedication to the common good.